Donald Trump once launched his campaign by calling Mexican immigrants rapists. He built an empire of fear around walls, deportations, and ICE raids. And yet, by 2024, nearly half of Latino voters chose him. From the outside, it feels impossible. How could the man whose presidency defined by cruelty at the border, family separation, mass deportations, promises of mass deportations, be embraced by the very communities he targeted? But the answer isn't simple, because Latino voters aren't a monolith. They're a country within a country, shaped by class, faith, geography, and history. And if you look closely, the story isn't one of betrayal. It's about belonging, identity, and a political system that still doesn't know how to listen. I'm an outsider looking in. I'm not here to judge. I just want to understand what happened here. The numbers that changed everything. According to Edison Research's 2024 exit polls, Trump won a whopping 46% of self-identified Hispanic voters, up 14 points from 2020. It was the highest Republican share of Latino support since the 1970s. He did especially well among Latino men, winning 55% compared to 38% of women. In counties where more than 20% of the population was Hispanic, his margin improved by 13 points from 2020. For decades, Democrats saw Latinos as a cornerstone of their coalition. Barack Obama won more than 2/3 of Latino voters in 2012. But by 2024, that alliance had cracked, and in some states, shattered. In Florida, Trump's campaign deepened its connection to Cuban, Venezuelan, and Nicaraguan communities through faith networks and business outreach. In Texas, working-class Mexican Americans along the Rio Grande, once solidly blue, shifted right. In Arizona and Nevada, younger Latinos split along gender and class lines. The most revealing finding came from Pew Research Center in June of 2025. Latino voters are increasingly behaving like other voters, driven by the economy, age, and education, not identity alone. So in other words, the Latino vote as a unified bloc is gone. The price of survival. In 2024, 2/3 of voters told pollsters in the US economy was in poor shape. Among Latinos, that number was even higher. 46% said their family's financial situation was worse than 4 years ago, according to Reuters. Trump leaned into that anger, promising tax cuts, attacking inflation, and branding himself as the workers' candidate. Republicans have consistently beat Democrats on connecting with voters on the economy, said Clarissa Martinez de Castro, vice president of the nonpartisan Unidos US Latino Vote Initiative. This was a referendum on the economy, and that has consistently been the number 1, 2, and 3 issues for Hispanic voters. To many Latino workers, especially men in construction, logistics, or small business, Trump's populism didn't feel racist. It felt more practical. He spoke about jobs, not social justice, about competition, not diversity. As one Mexican-born voter in Arizona told Reuters, the 3 biggest things of importance are family values, being pro-life, and religion. I don't feel like Kamala represents those values. Scene of the crime, once again religion, watch my other videos. That one quote catches something Democrats have really struggled to grasp. Trump didn't necessarily win the Latino vote. He met it where it already was. Faith, masculinity, and the fear of losing ground. Latino conservatism isn't new. It's woven through generations, shaped by faith, exile, and trauma. In the conversation, historians Julia Young and Jenna Clope Santamaria wrote that Latino support for Trump reflects deep historical currents, from Catholicism and evangelicism to anti-socialist sentiment among families who fled authoritarian regimes in Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua. The so-called Latino voter is really a multi-ethnic, diverse bloc, they wrote. While they share linguistic and cultural features, they are motivated by a wide variety of religious, political, and cultural factors that can be traced back to their experiences in Latin America. For older Latinos, especially men, Trump's swagger, his macho presentation, his defiance, it echoed familiar archetypes of authority. He wasn't like a politician, he was like the boss. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris's campaign leaned heavy on celebrity endorsements and feminist imagery, often alienating working class and religious men who felt unseen. I don't have a comment on that. I don't have a personal comment on that. As Clarence Page wrote in the Chicago Tribune, 2024 was the testosterone podcast election, where Trump dominated among young men, disaffected men. Scott Galloway, an NYU professor, put it like this: for the first time in US history, a 35-year-old man without a college diploma is making less than his parents were. Against that, do trans rights or foreign policy even register on your screen? In other words, Democrats talked about progress, while Trump talked about survival, immigration, ICE, and the politics of fear. And yet, here's the paradox again. Trump's ICE ramped up mass arrests, deportations, and raids on Latino neighborhoods. Early this year, Trump officials claimed 158,000 enforcement actions in the first 100 days. Through ICE's own data shows closer to 65,000 actual arrests. Either way, that scale was unprecedented. In Los Angeles, local leaders condemned the raids as a crisis tearing through immigrant neighborhoods. In Chicago, after a string of civil rights complaints, DHS expanded a policy requiring ICE agents to wear body cameras during enforcement operations. These are families torn apart, entire communities living in fear of a knock at the door. So why did millions of Latinos still vote for Trump, even knowing that? It's not like Trump said he wasn't going to do this. Because immigration, while emotionally powerful, isn't the top issue for most Latino voters. Pew Research found that jobs, inflation, and housing consistently outrank immigration by wide margins. And among some Latinos, particularly US-born voters or those who migrated decades ago, resentment towards new immigrants has grown. As the conversation noted, some Latino voters are suspicious of newer waves of migrants, particularly recent asylum seekers from Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. It's the same "I did it the right way" divide that has shaped immigrant politics for generations. Trump's rhetoric about border control doesn't sound hateful to those who see it as a defense of fairness. That's how populism works. The Democratic blind spot. Democrats did not lose Latinos overnight. They lost them slowly, through complacency. For years, campaigns relied on last-minute Spanish language ads, mariachi bands, symbolic gestures rather than sustained outreach. As Representative AOC told the New York Times, "I had been frustrated for a very long time about what I perceived as a laziness around talking to the Latino community. If you throw in Spanish, then you talk about immigration like you've checked off the Latino box." The Harris campaign tried to pivot, treating Latino voters as mainstream Americans rather than a niche demographic. Their ads focused on healthcare, rent, and the cost of living. It was a smarter strategy, but it came too late. As Carlos Odio, founder of the research group Equus, put it, Latinos don't want to be invited to some separate party. They want to be at the same party as everyone else. But the problem does run deeper than just messaging. It's also structural. Democrats rarely fund Latino organizers between elections. They lack cultural fluency across diverse communities. Mexican American in El Paso, Cuban American in Miami, Puerto Rican in Orlando, Salvadorian in LA. They all vote differently, but are often lumped together. And while Republicans have spent years embedding operatives in Latino churches, sport leagues, or small business networks, Democrats show up every 4 years and expect loyalty. As Mike Madrid, Republican strategist and author of Latino Country, wrote, Latinos exist as a multi-ethnic, aspirational, working-class community. As they become less of a racial voting bloc and more of an economic voting bloc, Republicans are becoming the beneficiaries. The irony is that many Latino voters still support progressive policies, like universal health care, affordable housing, and workers' rights, but they feel disconnected from the party that champions them, the fear machine. Then there's ICE, the quiet terror running beneath all of this. This year, mass raids are once again becoming political theatre. Trump boasted of record removals. Conservative media glorified ICE as defenders of law and order. But for millions of Latinos, even citizens, the sight of agents in tactical vests is going to spark panic. In an LA County meeting in October, one local organizer told reporters, "People are too afraid to take their kids to school. They see unmarked vans and they just run." This fear doesn't just shape policy, it shapes identity. When enforcement is so visible, when your cousin is deported or your neighbor frickin' disappears, you internalize the message. This government is not for you. And yet that's what makes this whole paradox deeper and more confusing. Some Latinos support ICE operations because they feel they protect their own legal status or their jobs. Others simply just want some stability and not chaos. I don't necessarily think it's an endorsement. It's exhaustion. Rebuilding trust, one voter at a time. So where does this leave us? If 2024 was the Latino realignment, 2028 could be the reckoning. Latinos now make up 14.7% of eligible US voters, the second largest group after white Americans. Every 30 seconds, a Latino turns 18. By 2032, they'll shape not just swing states, but the entire political map. But to earn their trust back, Democrats need more than slogans. They need presence. Here's what the research and the organizers on the ground say must happen next. Invest in year-round local organizing. Door-to-door bilingual outreach between elections, not just before them. Talk about economics like it's personal. Inflation, housing, and healthcare aren't kitchen table issues. They're survival issues. Democrats need to frame them as family issues, not just charts and slogans. Reclaim faith and family as progressive values. Evangelical networks have become powerful conservative organizing tools. Democrats can't ignore them. They need faith-based community partnerships that emphasize compassion, justice, and family stability. And most importantly, stop assuming identity equals loyalty. As the LA Times reported, Latinos want to be embraced as fully American. That means understanding that cultural pride and conservative values can coexist and that belonging matters more than branding. To be seen, not stereotyped. When I first started researching this, I kept circling one question: how could they? But the longer I looked, the more I realized that that was the wrong question. The better one is, why did so many feel like no one else was listening? Because when you're working two jobs, when rent eats your paycheck, when your faith feels mocked and your community ignored, you'll choose the candidate who at least says he sees you, even if he doesn't mean it. I wouldn't call that stupidity, I would call that survival. And unless Democrats learn to understand that, to meet Latino voters not as a bloc, but as people, the party that once built its coalition on diversity might lose the very movement it took for granted. Not because Latinos turned right, but because they were left behind. If you made it this far, you probably care about understanding why things happen, not just sort of reacting to them. That's what we do here 5 days a week. We go past the headlines, past the outrage, and try to actually make some sense of it. So if you want more deep dives like this one, hit subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss the next story. There's always crazy shit going on for me to unpack. Never a dull moment, right? And if you like this video, make sure you check out my other deep dive into why white women keep voting for Trump. What's going on there? Bye!